What's going on, everyone? So, rumors have came out about Scream 7 that, according to these rumors, Sidney Prescott will own her own business. She will either be owning a bar or a restaurant, and this is via Critical Overlord. So, it's very interesting, right? First off, this makes a lot of sense because, Sidney probably got bank, right? She's probably making a bag. Because one, she has all the movies. Two, right? She threatened to sue them if they didn't stop using her. Three, she had the book tour and all the book deals and stuff. You got to remember, Sidney Prescott in the Scream world was a celebrity, right? She was a big deal, right? Neve Campbell, Sidney Prescott. So, she's one of those people that probably has money, right? And you got to imagine she's going to want to invest and settle down and do all that stuff. So that's kind of cool that she would kind of have her own business, that she'd kind of do her own thing. I mean, you got to figure she's got to do something, right? She's got to have some type of work, right? She's got to, whatever it is, it was just, the question was okay, was it still in writing? Was she writing other books, or did she just kind of leave that to Gail, right? What is she doing with her life? What is her career? She just a multi-millionaire and just living at home, chilling, living her best life with her husband? Is Mark Kincaid still working? There were rumors a while back, which now we don't even know if Mark Kincaid is in this movie, at least the time of recording this video, unless something changes, right? Depending on when you're watching this. But there were rumors that Mark Kincaid might have been a stay-at-home dad, which I think would be interesting, right? Quit being a detective to just chill at home and be a dad, which would also make sense because, if Sidney has just bread, right? She makes sense that, hey, we're chilling. But nonetheless, right, I do like this. And this is something that has me excited that we might actually get some depth, get some stories, some history, and, information on Sidney and her family. Because that's one of my big things, right? If you're going to have Sidney and her family, which is this is a huge deal, right? Sidney Prescott, for all we know, she's never going to be able to have kids and stuff, right? And now all of a sudden she, has three, and, she has a husband, and she now has a business, and she's doing all this stuff and living her best life and this, that, and the other. It's just it's cool. It's cool to see. It's cool. I really want them to flush it out, though. I don't want them, I want backstory. I want depth into Sidney and her world. I want to see, how is she as a mother, right? How is she as a wife? Is she overprotective? Is she overbearing? Is she, just because of her trauma, does Mark kind of have to deal with, anxiousness or, frustrations or whatever, right? Anytime that there's a noise, is Sidney paranoid or something, right? Does she have escape routes and plans, right? How is Mark Kincaid? How is he as a husband? Is he, a bit of a drinker? Is he, a bit of an a-hole? Is he just Prince Charming? Do they have the perfect marriage? Do they have a rough marriage? Right? How is he as a father? Is he the cool dad? Is he kind of an a-hole? Right? All of these things I want to see fleshed out. How are her children? Right? Do they hate their mom because she's overbearing and overprotective? And it's just Mom, you're down my throat. I'm a kid. I need to live type thing. Right? There's so much that you can tell and unpack and relay about Sidney Prescott. Right? And that family. I don't want it to be something where it's just here's Sidney and her family, and then that's it. And it's just they're just going about, I want to see the family life. I want to see, the backstory, even if it's just some dialogue, somebody's just hey, how did you two meet? Right? And she just relays this story, or, what's her friend group like? Right? Supposedly we're supposed to dive into some of her friends, right? And neighbors and stuff. That's great. Right? I want all this stuff. I want as much details and information. And again, character development, story building, right? Who is Sidney at this point? Right? We don't know who Sidney is at this point. Right? We hadn't seen her in going to Scream in what was it? 12 years or whatever? Right? Or 11 years? And then Scream 5, you didn't even really get to see her. Right? She was just at the back end. We knew that she has a family and stuff, but we don't know, how Sidney is. I mean, we haven't seen Sidney Prescott and gotten to know Sidney Prescott, like really get to know Sidney Prescott in like 25 years, right? Like a lot's changed, clearly, because she has a family, she has kids. You know, she owns a bar now, right? So I wonder if they're going to have some like bar scenes like they did in Scream 5, right? When Vince is like trying to fight everybody, and Vince and Dewey gets punched by Vince and stuff, right? Like, so is that something that they're gonna kind of bring back? Like maybe have a bar scene, maybe have like Ghostface chasing somebody through a bar, right? Like, you know, or killing somebody at the bar. Somebody walks in and they're like, you know, we're closed or whatever. You know, you have the typical like diner scene, right? It's usually a diner scene, right? Where they're like, we're closed, and then somebody comes and kills them in the diner, right? Maybe you do that with the bar. Maybe one of Sidney's workers and stuff like that. But again, like, that's another layer, right? How is she as a business owner? How is her bar? Is her bar successful? Is it, you know, kind of drowning? She's trying to figure out how to keep it afloat. You know, does she have workers? Is it just her and Mark? Are they doing it? Assuming Mark's even in this movie. You know, like, how is she as a boss? Is she kind of, you know, a terrible boss? Is she, you know, does she trust people? Like, does she even want workers there? You know, like, does she have, like, insane security and stuff like that? And, like, guns everywhere? Like, you know, there's so many things. Again, so many layers that can be unpacked that I want to see them continue to unpack. I don't want them to kind of just brush over it, right? I don't want to see them do things where it's like, you know, like, this is silly, right? Like, so I'm hopeful that we really get some insight, right? Like, is Sidney's Bar like the local hangout? Is that like the kick it spot? Is that where everyone goes? That's where all the her friends and everybody hang out, right? Like, you know, is this where the end scene is, right? Like, if Sidney and her kids get attacked, is she just willing to abandon the bar and everything and just like get her and her kids out of there? Or like, you know, what's gonna happen, right? Like, storytelling, character development, right? Building sets, having different layers to this film, having different areas to this film. Like, these are all things I really want and I really want to see. And particularly with Sidney, again, like, we haven't seen her in 25 years. I'd like to know a little bit about her, right? I'd like to know a little bit about her life. I'd like to be able to get a peek into her world. I'm not saying you have to spend half the movie going over, okay, well, Sidney's this and that. Like, no, I'm not saying, like, you can do that through just dialogue and scenes and, you know, setup and stuff. I mean, look at Scream 96. All of that development was through just dialogue and interactions. You do the same thing with Sidney and her family, right? I mean, again, they're a family. Would it be hard to just have a scene or two with her and her family, like, all together, and they're just, like, talking and going about different things, and you know, you can get kind of the ebbs and flows of Sidney as a character, right? Her reaction, maybe her daughter tells her something, or her daughter has a boyfriend, and you just see Sidney's reaction. She's just like, oh, you know, like, does her daughter remind her of her? You know, does she remind her of someone else, right? Her name's supposed to be Tatum. Does she remind her of Tatum? Or is she kind of like, you know, like Sidney, kind of more quiet and not as, like, out there, right? Like, there's just so much that I want to see that I really hope that they don't kind of half-ass, right? Like, I want to make sure that this works, this is fleshed out, and done in a proper manner. Because, again, this is a huge opportunity for Sidney Prescott and Scream, right? So, got to do right by it, is my point. But her having a bar, I think, is very interesting. Excited to see that element. Or a restaurant. It could be a bar or a restaurant, it said. So, maybe it is a restaurant. Bar kind of makes more sense, in my opinion. But time will tell. We'll see. Assuming this is true. Again, take this stuff, as always, with a grain of salt. Don't just buy into it and assume that this is what it is. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Do you agree with my points? Disagree with my points? You think, like, yes, you gotta, like, it's gotta be fleshed out. You need to dive into characters. You need to tell stories. You need to do these things. Do you think, no, absolutely not, right? Like, you know, just keep things as is. You know, just kind of quickly give us some information and be done with it. What do you think of Sidney owning a bar or a restaurant? Do you prefer a bar or a restaurant? Is there anything in particular that you'd want to see from that and from her character? All these things, I'd love to hear it, so let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.